So I could tell you the story about perhaps my most embarrassing race ever in college. It's just really embarrassing. It's making me feel bad about myself on the inside, but if it's going to put a smile on your face and give you a little bit of laugh, then I'd be happy to share it. And then the other story I could share is the time that I ran my personal best in the 5K, how I was able to do that, not from a training perspective, but on the day at the meet. It was at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and I had a friend pace me, but he didn't really show up in the best condition. So let me know. Do you want to hear about my worst race ever, or do you want to hear about my 5K PR? Both are short stories, but they're both funny for their own different reasons. And until then, of course, if you guys want to just ask me anything, put in a question or two or three right here in that chat box on the Facebook Live video, and we'll have some fun. Let me start with my favorite story, which is my 5K PR story. Now, this was my senior year in college, and it was a dual meet at Wesleyan University. It was just us and Wesleyan. I actually don't think there were any other teams there, so it was a very small meet, kind of a meet just to one of the first meets of the outdoor track season. We were just trying to, get a good rust buster under our belt, see what kind of fitness level we were in, and we had talked to the Wesleyan coach who was running the meet beforehand. My coach talked to their coach and said, hey, can I have one of my alums come and pace one of my current athletes in the 5K? He's in good shape, and there's not going to be a lot of competition in this 5K because it was a really tiny meet. So can we have an alum come and pace him? And this runner was obviously me. I was the current athlete that my coach was asking about. And they got my friend Adam. My friend Adam's one of my best friends, and he's a very good runner. He was all New England athlete. He ran under 15 minutes in the 5K, really fast. Nowhere near what I was capable of doing. But I asked him, I was like, hey, would you pace me for the 5K? Maybe run 11 and a half of the 12 and a half laps on the outdoor track. And he said, yeah, no problem. I'll come. The race starts at 9 in the morning. I'll be there, and you name the 400-meter split, and I will execute on it. You want to run 77s on the dot, one after the other, I'll do it. So I'm getting excited. Here's my friend. He's about to sacrifice himself on the track for me, and I'm excited because I know he can do what he says he's going to do. He can run my PR on the 5K and basically jog it. He's incredibly talented, right? So race starts at 9 in the morning, and I'm warming up. I start warming up around 8:15 or 8:30, and I do my warm-up. I go for an easy run. I start doing my strides. The race starts in 10 minutes, and my buddy is nowhere to be found. The guy who's supposed to be pacing me is just completely absent. And I'm laughing thinking about this because it was right then, about 10 minutes until the start of the race, where I saw him walk in. There he goes, just sauntering in, no big deal. He's like, I'll run for 5 minutes, and then we'll start the race. So I'm very nervous. I'm like, we're going to try to run like 5-10 miles, and here you are. You're going to do that with a 5-minute warm-up? Are you crazy? He says he's going to do it. And the best part is when I got a little closer to him, and I realized my friend reeks of beer. He was hungover and was going to run 5-10 mile pace for just about 3 miles to pace me for a hopeful personal best attempt. And my friend shows up hungover, practically late for the race. On the one hand, I thought it was amusing, but on the other hand, I was like, dude, you had a responsibility. What's going on? You're supposed to be here for me, pacing me. Let's do this. And he's like, don't worry about it. I may smell like Busch Light, but I'm feeling good. So I'm like, okay. All right. As long as you can do what you say you're going to do, I'm going to be happy. So I finish my strides. He gets in a couple minutes of running. We get on the starting line, and the gun goes off. Now, he's a little frisky on the first lap. He brings me through the first 400, I think it's 75 or 76 seconds. And then after that, I'm breathing like a stuck pig. I basically don't feel good 200 meters into this race, but I'm hanging on for dear life. And my God, my friend did it. Adam, my buddy, successfully paced me. And when I had 400 meters to go, he veered off into lane 4 so that I could kick hard over the last 400. And it was a big success. Even though he was hungover, even though I had to smell booze behind him for the whole 5K, I ran, let's see, a 4-second PR, which doesn't sound like much, but in a short race like the 5K, you fight for every second. And I was able to run 16:02. It's my PR to this day. And while part of me has died a little bit on the inside, because I've never broken 16 minutes in the 5K, it was, however, a great experience, and you have to celebrate every PR. Even if it's not exactly the time that you were hoping for, it's still a big achievement. It's the fastest time that you have ever run in your entire life. So I was really happy with it. And to this day, my friend Adam and I have a good laugh when we think about the time that he helped me run my PR easily while he was hungover with barely any warm-up. So part of that is also very humbling, because this is someone who can run my PR quite easily when he's hungover and with very little warm-up. And so it just goes to show the spectrum of running is varied and performance is quite relative. And that's why I really like to focus on improvement, your personal improvement. Where are you today? Can you be in a better position 10 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, sometime in the future? And if you are getting better, if you are making strides forward, then that's really all we can ask for. All right. I hope you guys I hope you guys had fun with that story of Jason's hungover friend pacing him to a 5K. But I'm just very grateful that it worked out. Now, I also want to help you guys with any questions that you might have about your own running, about my running. You can ask me about strength running. You can ask me about why I have so many plants in my office. You can ask me about really anything you'd like. So I want you to be able to use this time to your advantage and get as much out of it as possible. If not, then we will conclude Coach Jason's story hour here right before I go have lunch. Laura has one. Which one of your strength programs do you recommend to start off with? I do strength train. I've been running for 15 years. See that you have a few different strength programs online and looking for one for strength training for running. Laura, I would recommend high performance lifting. It is adaptable depending on what kind of fitness level you're in right now, but considering that you have some experience with strength training, you've been running for 15 years, and you actually want to do some strength training, then high performance lifting is our flagship weightlifting program. It does require either access to a gym or a good home gym setup. So you need proper equipment with a squat rack and a barbell and a variety of plates so that you can add weight and progress from the beginning of the program. So look into that, and yeah, that's it. I mean, if you want a weightlifting program, it's definitely high performance lifting. If you want more variety with your body weight strength exercises, then I would go with injury prevention for runners. That has a much wider variety of body weight and slightly assisted exercises. So you may need like a resistance band or a medicine ball, for example. JT says, I'm thinking about focusing on the mile this summer. Any training or training plan suggestions? I'm in Texas, so it's hot. Yeah, first of all, I think it's a great idea. I think distance runners are really well served going back and forth between really long distances like the marathon and the half marathon, and then what we can really consider mid-distance events like the mile, 2 mile, 5K, maybe even the 10K. So yeah, I think that's a great idea, JT. Training suggestions. Number one, maintain your long run. Don't think that you only have to run 5 or 6 miles as a long run if you're training for the mile. I think it's very instructive that the best milers in the world do, 15 plus mile long runs. So endurance is always a good thing, no matter, even if you're training for the mile. I would also do a lot of workouts where you're running faster than your mile pace, but for a relatively short repetition. So something like 150 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters, all the way up to 400 meters at your goal race pace or a little bit faster, so that you can really get good neuromuscular adaptations, not just physically, so you're getting the benefits of training at your goal race pace, but also neuromuscular, so the brain muscle connection. And that's going to help you really ingrain that pace and get comfortable a little bit running at a much, much faster speed. Training plan suggestions. That's a good question, JT. I should probably write up some mile training plans for team strength running, because I don't think we have any, and nobody has actually asked me for them. So let me write a note right here, because I like to say the team is really your team. If you guys want something that's not in the team, or you have a question about something, just ask me about it, and I'll try to make it happen for you. So JT, we're going to get some mile plans in team strength running soon. I can't promise them, within a day or two, but let me start building a couple, and I'll create various levels of training plans, and you guys can have at it if you're training for the mile. Michelle's asking, can you tell a story of how you overcame a slump in motivation? Yeah, so Michelle, first let me start with the fact that I never really dealt with this too much when I was training, because I had such a great support system around my running. I had a team, I had a coach, and I didn't have a family at the time. So I didn't really have as many responsibilities, and I was really able to focus on my running. And for a really long time, I was just so obsessed with getting better. I was obsessed with improvement. I was getting obsessed with, PRs. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to run PRs. Didn't matter if it was the 800 meters, the 10K, the half marathon, the marathon, 4x400 meter relay. I didn't care as long as I was getting better. So for most of my career, I never really had motivation issues. I think it was really troubling for me after I got hurt after my first marathon. This is what really sticks out in my mind, where I couldn't run for a really long time. It was about 6 months, and every time I would try to go for a run, I'd have sharp shooting pain in my knee, consistent with IT band syndrome. And for a while, I was thinking to myself, well, maybe I'll just quit. I ran a marathon. I ran 2:44. That's a pretty good time. I should be happy with my running career to date. But as the months went by and I wasn't doing anything and I wasn't exercising, that really does a toll on your mental health. And I decided that, look, running is what you love to do. Running is what makes you happy. That doesn't necessarily mean that you enjoy every run, or that you want to get up at 6 a.m. to do your running before you go to work. Of course not. But at the same time, just because something is difficult or challenging doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. So for me, it was just the decision to do what I love, despite the fact that I didn't always love doing it. And I really had to take my injury prevention to a whole new level. That whole injury and what I went through mentally, and then to get healthy, and then to also restructure my training in a certain way so that I could not get injured so much. That's one of the prime reasons why I even started strength running way back in 2010. So for me, this is like a big life moment. Who knows if strength running would even be here if I didn't get that injury. So there's a lot of good things that can come out of injuries. But for me, the slump in motivation was because I wasn't running, and I had to start running to get it back. Even though I flirted with potentially giving up on running for good. Maybe I would run once or twice a week for general health, but that wasn't really for me. I wanted to run, I wanted to train, I wanted to race, and I wanted to see what I could do in a race situation, because I just find that so incredibly attractive, just as something to pursue. So for me, getting out of that slump meant that I had to really focus on getting healthy, on staying healthy, and then on all the little habits that allowed me to stay healthy long term. So hope that was helpful for you, Michelle. Johnny's a recent member. Johnny, thanks for joining. Bunch of questions here. Johnny says, how long does it typically take for a runner to reach their potential or their peak? That's a great question. And let's see. Great running coach Greg McMillan has once said that I like to tell my athletes that it takes 3 to 4 years of training with me for you to start seeing your potential. And these are post-collegiate athletes who have trained at a really high level in high school and college. And so that really shows that we're talking more than a decade. If you start running at age 14, like I did, you're not going to reach your peak until your mid to late 20s, maybe even your 30s if you're really smart with your training. A lot of that has to do with maturity and hormones and, all the kind of, age-related issues that help you run your fastest in your late 20s and in your 30s. But it is going to take a while. And it takes a while because the number one determinant of your success as a distance runner is your endurance, your aerobic fitness, your metabolic fitness. And that is something that, unlike VO2 max, which is really not a good predictor of your performance, your aerobic fitness is, but it takes a long time, it takes a long time to develop. To really develop your aerobic metabolism and your endurance, you have to run a lot, and you have to, do consistent long runs and not miss time because you don't want to run or you're injured or whatever the other reason might be. And so reaching your potential really becomes an exercise in consistency and in staying healthy and in staying motivated to run at a high level for years and years and years. Because it takes years and years to be able to even run a high enough weekly mileage. So something like, if you want to be able to run 80 miles in a week, you're not going to get there in 3 years. You need more time to be able to get there unless you have some incredible, genetic gifts, some talents where you can just, start running and within a couple months be running 50 miles a week and you're fast. It's like, wow, okay, you were meant to be a runner. But for most of us, it's going to take years and years and years. So Johnny also says, my dream is to achieve a sub-3 marathon time if that's ever possible. My PR for the half marathon is 1 hour 45. 10K is 44 minutes. 5K is 21 minutes. If I train consistently for a couple of years, is it possible to achieve my dream at all? Yes, I think so, but I also don't know. I'm not really in the business of telling runners that they can't accomplish their dreams. I think it's very possible because I've seen the impossible happen with runners who make the decision to make the impossible happen. It kind of just depends on how much you're willing to run, how consistent you're willing to be, what you're willing to do with regard to your running, because an incredible amount of achievement is incredibly possible if you go about it the right way. So one of the best ways to figure this out, Johnny, is to look at equivalent performances. So you're never going to run a sub-3 marathon if your other race times aren't equivalent to a sub-3 marathon. So for example, let's see. Your 5K time of 21 minutes is much more competitive than your half marathon time or your marathon time. Actually, I don't know what your marathon time is, but it's definitely your half marathon time. So here's the thing. If you want to run a sub-3 marathon, this is what you have to do. You need to run, let's see. You need to run 18:20, but maybe 18:15 in the 5K. You need to run about 38:15 in the 10K. You need to run about 85 minutes in the half marathon. So you should work on getting those shorter distance times down to that level. That will make it so your fitness level is roughly comparable to a 3-hour marathoner. Then you just have to go and do the marathon training. And of course, it's probably going to take you a couple attempts because this is a big jump forward for you, but I definitely think it's possible if you train really well. In terms of marathon, half marathon, and 10K, how many races should I enter per year, and what should their frequency be? So if you're running a marathon, you really can't run more than 2, maybe 3 marathons per year if you want to run them hard. If you're doing half marathons, you can always do a half marathon as a tune-up race. So now we're talking 2 to 3 marathons with 2 to 3 half marathon tune-ups. But that doesn't mean that you are focusing on the half marathon. No, that means you're really focusing on the marathon. Now, if you were to have a half marathon training season, and I really think most years should basically have 3-ish distinct training cycles, where within each cycle, your goals change. Maybe you have a half marathon cycle where you run 2 half marathons, a 5K, and a 10K. That sounds great to me. Maybe you have another cycle where your goal is the marathon and you have 1 half marathon tune-up race. And then you have another training cycle throughout the year that is, maybe dedicated to the 10K, and you run 3 5Ks and 2 10Ks during that season. And so we must think of in terms of cycles, seasons. Let's go through that training cycle and then it repeats. Rest, base training, hard training, rest. Kind of just goes in that cycle in perpetuity. So yeah, it really depends on the races, but if you're racing 5Ks and 10Ks, you can run one, 2 weekends in a row, then take a week off. You can be much more aggressive with racing the shorter distances. Jordan has a question about icing. What's your opinion on icing, particularly in situations where rice is preached? I've read a lot of stuff recently that suggests this may go the way of the dinosaur, like static stretching, and that the temporary relief may be a red herring. That is to say, icing may do more harm in treating non-acute injury than good. Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with that, Jordan. I think the current research is showing that icing can short circuit that adaptation process. So you go do a long run or a hard workout. What do you want after that? Well, you want your body to be a little bit sore. You want to be tired. You want your body to be in a state of being stressed. Because when your body is stressed, it says to itself, I didn't like that. Jordan, I did not like that workout you just put me through. So I'm going to get a little bit stronger. I'm going to build more mitochondria in our muscles so that the next time you go and do that long run, we're going to be a little bit more prepared. I mean, that's just the adaptation process. And what icing does is it kind of short circuits that because it reduces the amount of stress that your cells and your muscles are under. So if you reduce that stress, you're just going to get less of an adaptation response to it. So I like to use icing during times when you really do need to reduce that stress. So let's say you're training for a marathon or really any race and you're building your mileage and you go out there for a long run and you get lost and you end up running 3 more miles than usual when you really shouldn't have been running that much. That might be a good time to take an ice bath because you have just overdone what you should have done. So let's say your coach has you do a workout. We'll keep it simple, 5 by 400 meters. And then after you're supposed to do them in, let's say, a minute 45 each. Okay, so what happens if you do all of them in 90 seconds and you're like, I'm totally toast. My legs are fried. I feel terrible. Well, now's another good time to take an ice bath. And so it's basically when you either overreach, you overdo things, you do too much too soon before you're ready for it, or it's when you're actually recovering from an injury. It's something like, you sprained your ankle or you're in day 1 or 2 of some Achilles tendinopathy. That's a good time to be icing because icing is good at pain relief. It's not good at actually healing whatever you're dealing with. We want to treat the injury. We don't want to just mask the pain. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to describe icing. It short circuits the stress adaptation cycle and it masks pain. Well, if you need to reduce pain, then that's a good thing. Or if you do too much and you really need to mask pain or get rid of some pain and reduce some swelling because you've done too much, then it's a good time for it. But I don't really like to use icing during the normal training process when you don't have to. Sarah's here. Hey, Sarah. Sarah says, I have a question about strength training. I'm going through a high-performance lifting cycle at present, but limited by my equipment. A few kettlebells, some bands, and a TRX. I think I've found suitable replacements for everything except back squats. I've tried using a large band, which was really awkward, so I'm using a couple of kettlebells in a racked position. Is that okay, or does having the weight more forward negate the purpose of the exercise? Yeah, that's a good question, Sarah. I think so there's obviously no perfect way to do these exercises when you don't have the right equipment. So if you can find any replacement, which sounds like the band, I don't know, the band was too awkward. You're using a couple kettlebells in a racked position. That I might say that that's okay. You know, you're not going to get exactly the same stimulus, but I think if you're adhering to the spirit of the program, then you're going to come out of it with 90% of the fitness, the strength, and the overall benefits of the high performance lifting program. Because obviously, look, we're all kind of doing what we can right now with no gym access, with gyms are closed. It's really hard. You know, you just can't get in the same workout if you don't have the same equipment. So I would just encourage you to not really worry about it too much. And if the using the kettlebells feels like it works okay, then let's just stick with that, okay? All right, so also Sarah says, also more generally, when doing exercises with less weight than you could do with gym equipment, is increasing reps the way to compensate for the lower weight? Mix in more single leg varieties of the same exercise. I've been experimenting with both. Yeah, this is an excellent question. And there's a couple strategies here. Let's see, I'm actually going to pull from an article I just wrote for Podium Runner, How to Lift for Strength and Power Without a Gym. So one strategy is, yes, do more repetitions. So because you're not lifting any weight with a body weight exercise, the stress is less. You can increase the stress by doing more repetitions. Just be careful, because if you're used to doing 10 reps and now you're going up to 30 reps, you're tripling the amount of work that you're doing. So I don't want you to get an injury. Just be a little mindful of that. The other strategy, Sarah, is that you can lift with slow eccentrics, but powerful concentrics. And so that just refers to the type of muscle contraction that's happening. So let's just take a squat, for example. The eccentric phase of this exercise is when you're squatting down, because the major muscle in the squat, the quadriceps, is lengthening while it's under load. And then the concentric contraction is when the quad shortens or flexes when you stand up. So go real slow down and then powerfully come up to the standing position. And you can do that for almost any exercise. That's going to increase the stress of the exercise and get you a little bit more out of it. You can also use supersets, and that's when you move from one exercise to the next with either no rest or very little rest. It's kind of like a circuit. And so if you have a circuit or a superset that focuses on the same muscle groups, like say just your legs, you know, different types of squats, deadlifts, lunges, for example, that's one of the ways to make this kind of a workout more challenging. It's kind of similar to like doing a 20-mile long run where you'd run the last 5 miles at your goal marathon pace. The 5 miles of work at the end at goal marathon pace, it gives you more benefits than if you were to do the 5 miles at goal pace after just say a 2-mile warm-up. Because the first 15 miles serve to pre-fatigue your legs. You're already tired, and it's going to spur more adaptations in the body. So that's another way that you can do it. And then finally, combine and expand on this. So you can do supersets or those circuits with more repetitions. You can do more repetitions with some of the slower eccentrics and powerful concentrics. And I think that's a really good way to do it. But at the end of the day, it's not the same workout as the gym. We're all just doing the best we can until gyms do open up. And until that time comes, I think it's fine to do as best as we can. And hopefully when the gyms do open up, we've just been consistent enough with maintenance work that we can get back in there and restart our lifting with no other problems. So I'm going to take off right now. Thank you guys so much for coming out and talking shop with me. This was fun. I hope you enjoyed my ridiculous story about my hungover friend helping me run a PR. And thank you so much for your questions. We'll be in touch. Yes, Sarah, go ahead. Tag me as much as you want in the Facebook group. That is always the best way to make sure that I see a question, because sometimes I don't see something that I'm not tagged in. And I will 100% get in there and answer your questions for you. So I hope you guys had fun with this impromptu Facebook Live that I thought of last week. And maybe we'll do this again sometime soon. All right, guys, talk to you soon.